Dr. White is a frequently sought after keynote speaker and leadership trainer, and so we're excited to have him talk to us today. So with that, I'll pass it over to Dr.
All right. Great, Eunice, thank you. And I will assume that you all can hear me. All right, good. I got a nod there from Rob. Okay, well, hey, welcome. And I'm glad to be here. And we're gonna talk about appreciation in the workplace, what that looks like practically. I always feel like it's fair for people to know a little bit about who they're listening to so you can sort of determine how much you want to believe of what I have to say. So just a little bit about me. I am a psychologist. There's pros and cons to that, but have done, work with businesses, with families, assessment kinds of things. I've written 4 books. 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace is in 15 languages. It sold 250,000 copies. Sink or Swim is sort of like Who Moved My Cheese. It's a fable version of it. When I was early on working with organizations about trying to make a more positive workplace, kept running into toxic places, and so did some research and wrote about that and how to survive that. And then just recently, this spring came out with The Vibrant Workplace that talks about the common obstacles you have to overcome to create a culture of appreciation. I'm pretty straightforward and practical. I grew up in the Midwest. I've lived in Chicago, Phoenix, Atlanta, and I'm back in the Midwest now. And I like to have fun and laugh, and hopefully we'll do some of that as well. In fact, we'll start off with a cartoon here in a minute. Just logistics, if you are interested so that you don't have to try to remember stuff or take notes, if you just email me at yesdrpaul@gmail.com, put Logitech in the subject line because I do several webinars and that kind of stuff, and I'll send you the handouts of today's slides, and I'll send you another article as well about recognition both from peers and managers, and then a funny video that I like to show but don't have time today. Here are the goals for today. I want to help you understand the importance of appreciation and how it differs from traditional employee recognition. I want to define the core principles necessary for people to truly feel valued, not interested in just sort of going through the motions and looking like you appreciate somebody, or just doing sort of a programmatic kind of thing. And I want to give you practical tools and resources that you can use immediately, even today. If we don't get practical, I've wasted your time, I've wasted mine. I want to help you be able to make some changes in your life if you're interested. And like I said, I want to have some fun. So here's a cartoon I enjoy. Sort of talks about the sad state of employee recognition. He says, every time you do something right, I'll punch your rewards card. And when you reach 10,000 punches, you earn a high five. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of recognition programs look like. They sort of have to do a lot for not much. I don't know much of anything about yours, so I'm not speaking about what you all do there at Logitech, but unfortunately, that's sort of the way it happens sometimes. Let's talk about the importance of appreciation. We're going to differentiate between appreciation and recognition. A couple of foundational facts. Most people really do want to feel appreciated and valued in their jobs. Yes, we have to be self-motivated. Yes, we have to, sort of not just look for and work for other people's praise. But, there are times when you want to get some validation that what you're doing is valued, and either by your supervisor or your colleagues or even your customers. The problem is that most people don't feel appreciated. And there's lots of research. I sort of netted it out here. One study showed that almost 80%, so 4 out of 5, 79% of employees who quit their jobs, they leave voluntarily, cite a lack of appreciation as a key reason for their leaving. Now, most business managers and leaders tend to think that people leave for more money, and that may be true in some settings briefly, but most of the time, leaving a job takes a lot of emotional energy. It takes an emotional driver, and it's when people just feel like they don't give a rip about me, and so I'm out of here. Another study showed that 65% of North Americans, mainly U.S. citizens and Canadians, report that they've received no recognition or appreciation at their workplace in the past year. When I first saw this, I was like, can this be true? Because we know now that about 85% of all companies have some form of employee recognition, and so what's going on? I think the key word there is that they haven't received it. It's maybe being sent, but it's not getting to them. And so it's the same as nobody sent it if they don't get it. Here's a one that I like a lot. 51% of these managers across a number of corporations believe they do a pretty good job of recognizing employees for doing a good job. I like that statistic. It feels realistic. It's not 95% of managers feel like they're doing, a great job. It's about half saying I'm doing okay. But the problem is only 17% of the people who report to them feel like the manager's doing a good job. So we've got a disconnect there between the managers think I'm doing all right and the people below them feel like they're not hearing much. And that's really sort of the state of the situation. What's interesting to me is, I'm in this, I'm doing this. I'm not an HR person. I'm not a trainer. I sort of came in the side door from viewing relationships at the workplace. And, you think appreciation is important, but here's a study by the Boston Consulting Group that they did for 200,000 people worldwide, asked them, the different reasons why they enjoy their work. The number one was that they feel appreciated for their work. Now, this is real stuff. It's published. I couldn't sort of pay for that marketing. The second and fourth ones are tied in there as far as good relationships. And then money is not there until number 8. And so it seems like this is an important issue for people. So if it's important, but most people don't feel valued and appreciated, we got to ask why. What's going on that they don't? Well, first, as worked with, hundreds of companies and organizations and thousands of people, they just say, I don't hear much positive. It's just sort of like, I only hear something when I've made a mistake or they've got to correct me. I had a friend who told me, he said, I need this for my boss. And I asked him what's up. And he said, as long as I'm doing a good job getting it on time, I'm all right. And he said, in fact, the silence is deafening. But when I make a mistake, boom, they're all on top of me real quick. And it turns out that sort of like that statistic, he left there within 4 months because he didn't want to work in that kind of work setting. Another reason that people don't feel valued, well, and let me say this about this gal. She says, if I walk past your desk without stopping to criticize your work, that counts as a compliment. And unfortunately, a lot of managers and supervisors sort of, work this way. If I don't say anything, you're good to go. But that's not how most of us want to function on the receiving end. Sometimes the issue is that the messages that are sent aren't that meaningful to them. I mean, it's sort of like, you send out a blast email to your team and say, way to go, team. We met our goals for the quarter or the month, and, let's do it again. But that doesn't really say much to the individual who maybe stayed late to, enter the data, get the report done so that they got sent in. I mean, a group email is okay. It's a nice starting point. We did some research, and we have about, 95,000 people on our newsletter list, and we'll do polls occasionally and ask them what they hear that really doesn't do much for them. And one of the main comments was, good job. Why? Because it's too generic, and it's just sort of, you can throw it out there. And I had people say, my boss wouldn't know if I did a good job or not because they don't really know or understand what I do. I mean, they're, a manager and I'm technical. So anyway, we got to make sure that it's meaningful. After a while, there are a number of groups that I've worked with that have pretty well-designed and implemented recognition programs, but the focus is on performance. It's meeting the goals, and whether that's behaviors or monetary goals or whatever. And after a while, people start to resent that. They sort of like, hey, I'm more than just a production unit here. I am a person. I don't know about you, but I'm a person outside of work. I'm even a person at work, and so I have other characteristics besides just getting work done. And if that's all the communication is about, people start to resent that after a while. And then the thing that happens, we have a training process that we take HR leaders through and other leaders that look at the issue of employee recognition. And the big issue is that they just don't feel that the recognition is sincere. It's sort of mechanical. It's coming down. It's pretty generic. And it gets passed around from department to department. So they just sort of discount it. It's sort of like this. I mean, we don't want somebody a job to sort of say, okay, they want a high five, so we'll let them do it. As long as they pay for it, we'll do it. I mean, it doesn't go well. So you have to then ask, and this is when I talk to leaders of business divisions and owners and so forth, they want to know, well, what's the big deal about this? I don't really care how people feel, that's sort of their own deal. But actually, we know that important negative things happen when people don't feel valued or appreciated. First, for individuals, you just start to get frustrated. It's like, dude, did you see what I did? And I got this here, and then I don't hear anything, and you just ask for more. or you start to get sort of confused about, I thought you wanted me to do this, I did this, but apparently not, because you're critiquing it or asking me to do different kinds of things. After a while, you get discouraged. It's just like, why am I putting this extra effort in doing this? Nobody seems to care. And then this wouldn't happen at Logitech, but in some places, people get angry and they start yelling, at colleagues or vendors, or hopefully not customers, but they're just like, this isn't worth it. So that's sort of individually, but then there's some negative things that happen on the organizational level too when people don't feel valued. First of all, tardiness increases, meaning people come to work late, they come back from breaks late, they come back from lunch late. It's just like the day is pretty short. I recently spoke at HUD in DC, and I was amazed at how short their day was compared to what I put in. But anyway, and then they call in sick more often. We know that about a third of employees admit to calling in sick at least once a year when they're not really sick, and that increases when they don't feel like what they do matters. People don't follow policies and procedures. They're like, I'm not going to fill out all this paperwork. I'll let somebody else do it, and I'm just going to sort of bust through this. Productivity decreases, especially in the area of like creative problem solving, because that takes commitment and energy. And if you feel like it doesn't matter, you're not going to put it forth and you're just going to pass it off. What happens then, sort of like we saw in one of the pictures, people get irritable. I mean, if they don't feel valued, they're just got a chip on their shoulder and they're a little bit grumpier and more likely to bite back at you. Then, you start to have people that call in or work with you and you're short, or your colleagues are, and then, they're not happy about how they're treated from the customer's point of view. You have more turnover, and then it's just a tough group to manage too. I mean, if you got people coming in late, calling in sick, they don't do what they're supposed to, they're irritable, that's not a fun group to manage. So it just, negatively impacts in a lot of different ways, sort of the functioning of the organization. So, the question then becomes, if it's so important, why isn't it communicated more? I can tell you that the number one, and I would say probably the number two reason they're the same, is that people are busy. It's just like, I got plenty to do. I don't need another thing to do. In fact, one of the things as a psychologist, I'm into helping create behavior change either for individuals or groups. I know people are busy, so we've gone about this process in a way to not create another to-do list for you. You got at least two going. I mean, your regular one, and then sort of, your projects, and then you don't need a recognition or appreciation to-do list. But one of the cool things that we found is that, one, it doesn't take much time. We're really actually just asking you to do a little bit different what you're already doing, but in a more targeted way, and that it actually frees up time because people get stuff done. So busyness, a lot of time people think, well, hey, we got an employee recognition program that should fit, and they just need to work for it. And sometimes people just say, I'm not into this stuff. I sort of grew up and made where I am, and I didn't have anybody pat me on the back, and I turned out fine. So, get a life and grow up, right? Well, that may be true to some degree, but the fact is that we know people get worn out, discouraged, and if they don't have a sense of support, it doesn't go well, and like I said, they tend to leave. So here's the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. I just want to emphasize that employee recognition isn't the same as what we talk about authentic appreciation. They can overlap some, but they're not directly the same, and there's a lot of very specifics, but we'll go into a few. First, let me just say that when I go and speak and work with supervisors, managers, individual frontline workers, ask them about their employee recognition programs, here are the 3 most common responses I get. First, apathy. It's like, Steve, do we have one of those? I guess so. Yeah, every quarter we go down to the break room and have a little deal, and it's the same. They have donuts, and I don't care. I go for the donuts, but then I'm out of there. It doesn't have any impact on them. Then you go to sarcasm. I was working with a group in Chicago. This guy said, oh, yeah, we got a great employee recognition program. He said, one of the deals is when you get employee of the month, you get a free, a better parking space, which is an issue in Chicago. But he said, but I ride my bike to work, and I still got the parking spot for the car. And it was like, what's this about? It wasn't about him at all or what was important to him. And then you add a little bit of anger or something like that, and you get cynicism. And I had one leader tell me, she said, it's fine, we're going through this, yada, yada. But they don't give a rip about us. They're only doing this to sort of make themselves look good to the board of directors or to try to improve our employee engagement scores. And so there was a lack of trust, really. And sometimes you have to deal with that first. But it's especially magnified when the recognition process is just sort of very generic and the same for everybody. And in fact, here's some reasons why most employee recognition programs don't work. I mean, they're just not perceived as genuine. Everybody gets the same certificate. You don't even really know why they're being recognized. And so I've had people say, I don't know why I got the award. They didn't tell me. I just got it. Sometimes it's viewed as being just political. This month it's accounting. Next month it's IT. Then it's, I don't know, HR and then facilities. And it just feels like it's not a big deal. And that it's organizational. I mean, it's coming down from the top. And you might even get the award from the president or CEO or the executive VP, and they don't know you. I mean, it's like, okay, that's all right. And one of the deals is, one of the things I've learned is that recognition is really good for what it's designed for, and that is to monitor and reward behaviors that we want to have happen. But that's different than helping an individual feel valued and appreciated. When they try to use recognition for that, that doesn't work. So really the primary difference between recognition and appreciation is that recognition is about performance, and that's okay. And there are a lot of places that it works really well and you see performers do well. The problem is when you try to use it for appreciation, it doesn't work because appreciation is about the person and it's not just about performing well. We all go through stages in life where, at least I think so, we aren't at our top. I have twin sons that are now young adults, but when they were infants, it was sleep deprivation to the max. And I wasn't the best at my game. Was I a bad employee? No, but I wasn't winning awards. I know that. Did I still have value? Yeah, but I wasn't up there. And in fact, we know that recognition programs tend to impact only about the top 10 or 15% of employees. Now, a lot of supervisors and managers say, yeah, what do you do about all the low performers? I basically say, don't worry about it, because if you manage them right, they're either going to move up or you should get them out of there. The group you need to be concerned about is that big middle group who are solid people. They show up every day. They're doing the best they can, but they're not stars. And they sort of know it. I mean, but they never hear anything on the recognition part because they're not in the top 10 or 15%. Those are the people you're going to lose if you're not careful and don't pay attention and communicate the value that they bring to you personally and or to the organization. So fortunately, I sort of talked about the problems, but fortunately we absolutely do. And here's two words that psychologists don't use very often. One is a fact, and the other is absolutely. We absolutely do know how to train employees to successfully communicate authentic appreciation. Key word there is employees. This is not just for managers and supervisors. We started out actually a number of years ago, 9 years ago or so, focusing on managers and supervisors, but pretty quickly we found out that one, people want to be encouraged and hear appreciation from their colleagues. And two, it works better when both peers and supervisors are involved, so that it's not all the weights on the leadership, so forth. And we've done so in a lot of different settings. It's been pretty cool. We're working with a mining company in South Dakota. We work with hospitals and so forth. Here's some of our lists. I know there's some on there that you may not have positive thoughts or feelings about, but nonetheless, a lot of different kinds of things, 650 colleges and universities, hospitals, nursing facilities. And I say, hey, if we can do it with TSA, we can do it with anybody. So, it doesn't matter what the industry is. It's more about the leadership and what they want to accomplish. So here's sort of a key part, besides the 5 languages that we're going to get to in just a second. And that is there's 4 core conditions that we found that need to be in place for people to truly feel valued and feel appreciated. So people will feel valued if the appreciation that's communicated is, first of all, communicated regularly versus once a year. Once a year at your performance review is just not going to get it done, or even twice a year. I had an IT group in, I think it was in Wisconsin. They said, well, how about, maybe once a quarter? I said, if they're going to get a sense that you really mean it, it probably needs to be a little bit more than that. But it depends on the relationship too. And if you're on a committee with somebody you only see them once a month, that's different than somebody that you work with day to day, right, together. But it needs to be regular so that they don't have a sense that, oh, we just went through this training and you did this. Secondly, the appreciation needs to be expressed in the language and actions most important to the recipient. Key word is recipient. It really doesn't matter if you communicate appreciation to people around you in the way that you like, because what's important is that they feel valued. And a key issue and sort of growth point for a lot of developing leaders is you've got to learn how to lead and relate to people who are different than you. And that includes motivating them and, helping them feel valued and appreciated. So it's that you understand that, hey, they may like some time, even though time is not an issue for me. And if I'm just talking to them and send them emails and all that, and that's low for them, it's not going to get the job done. So you've got to communicate it in the language and actions, and I'll explain that in a second, that are important to the recipient. Third piece is that it needs to be individualized and delivered personally. Now, when I first developed this, I thought, there's some things that are just sort of obvious, but I hear stories back or I'm told things that I'm like, well, I guess I got to emphasize this. It's about them as a person. So it's not just a group, but it's about, hey, thanks, Janice, for showing up on time and even a little bit early, making sure the office is open and ready to go so that if a client or a customer calls in or shows up, we're ready to serve them. That's different than saying, hey, thanks for being here every day. It needs to be really about them, and it needs to be delivered personally. I had a story shared with me that a leader had a person on their team do a project, and he told the leader, in this case it was a guy, he told his assistant, said, hey, I want you to go tell Jason what a great job he did on that project and how much I really appreciate it. And the assistant went and told Jason, and Jason sort of looked at her, quizzically, and it's like, can he get up out of his chair and tell me or call me or whatever? I mean, it needs to be personal, not just through somebody else, for sure. And then the fourth condition that's necessary for people to truly feel valued is that they need to be, the appreciation needs to be viewed as being authentic. Now, one of the interesting things is that authenticity is really in the possession of the receiver, because you can truly value and appreciate somebody, but they don't believe that you do. And in our training, we go through a lot of different reasons why your communication might be viewed as inauthentic, but you've got to show them in a way that's meaningful to them. And we absolutely don't want you just blowing through this and just acting like you appreciate somebody. That does not go well. If you don't appreciate somebody, just wait. I mean, there's some ways to sort of problem solve around that and find out what's up. But if you just try to fake it, it will probably undermine the trust, that any kind of trust that's already there. So 4 conditions of communicating it regularly in the language and actions important to the recipient. It needs to be individualized and delivered personally, and it needs to be perceived as being authentic. But which, by the way, can be tough for some people who are introverts or a little bit socially awkward, because when you're anxious, the things that you do or say can be misinterpreted as not being authentic, because you tend to look down, you don't have much emotion in your voice. And so lots of times with shyer people, will start with written kinds of things rather than face-to-face to help them get past that. So here's a core principle. Sometimes, I've gotten past it, but I used to be sort of embarrassed about how simplistic this stuff is from a principle point of view. First principle is that not everybody feels appreciated in the same ways. Now, almost everybody intellectually assents to that, but the issue is that what we actually do when we communicate appreciation is usually the same 2, maybe 3 things to everybody. So we don't actually behave in the way that we believe that. But that's where the 5 languages come in. Now, some of you may be familiar with the 5 love languages. It's a great book on relationships. And we took the concepts from that, applied to work relationships, and drove it in the appreciation direction. But they're the same languages in name, but we'll see that they differ in action. Words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and yes, even physical touch. And all you HR people, don't worry. We'll have paramedics ready for you when we talk about that. Okay, words of affirmation, 2 parts. Words, you're telling them something and you're affirming them. All right, so, and again, it's about them. It's good to use their name, be specific about it. And for some people, they love to hear, a word of praise or a compliment or just an affirmation from their supervisor or boss, and that'll, keep them going for a couple weeks. And it can be oral. For other people, getting a text or an email or, whatever intranet kinds of communication you have can be helpful as well. By the way, in the old days, I'm a boomer. In the old days, a handwritten note was meaningful. It is still for some people, but I can tell you for 20-something guys, the majority of them don't give a rip about getting a handwritten note. But it's more about the speed in which they get the feedback. So that if you go get a note, right, send it to them, get it through the mail or whatever, 4 or 5 days later, they're like, they forgot about what happened. So you got to get it back to them in the next 24 to 48 hours. And in some places, a lot of recognition programs are about big group kinds of recognition. And I just got to tell you, that doesn't work well. Now, I can't do it in this setting, but every time I'm in a live setting, I ask, how many of you would really prefer not to go up in front of a large group to be recognized or, receive an award? And there's a few exceptions, but 30 to 40% of the general workforce don't want to go up in front of a large group. That's a big number, especially if we're cranking out these kinds of award ceremonies. And it depends on the position. I mean, administrative assistants tend to be a little bit more introverted in a lot of times, and they're about 60%. Librarians are 90%. I've worked with high-performing financial advisors, and they're like, bring on the TV and cameras. They love that stuff. And so it differs. But in fact, I had a woman leader who had received a significant award, and she said, yeah, I spent the 15 to 20 minutes prior to getting the award in the bathroom throwing up. She was so nervous. So it's not like it was a significant event, but not in a positive way for her. So we want to communicate appreciation in a way that's meaningful to the recipient. It's sort of like this guy says, as Employee of the Month, you'll have the honor of being blamed for everything that goes wrong in this office for the next 30 days. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why people don't want to go up front. They don't want to have to say anything. Lots of times they're afraid of the negative backlash or judgment from their peers. They don't want to trip, whatever. But it's just not for everybody. Quality time, by the way, words of affirmation. We've had over 120,000 people take our online inventory that I'll talk about in a minute. And words of affirmation is the most common language of appreciation. It's about 45% of the population really do value words. Now that means 55%, if you're following me with math here, it's not words, right? And so quality time is another language, and it actually differs. And the quality time language is the one that drove us to look deeper. It's not only the language, but the action. Some people really do value some individual time with their supervisor, either to be able to share some observations or hear things back and be able to just, dialogue about things. But I've had people say, I do not like or want individual time with my supervisor. I'm sort of introverted. They're pretty intense. No, thank you. But what they do like is going and hanging out with their friends, whether that's over lunch or after lunch, on the weekends or whatever. And for guys, a lot of time, they do things together, whether it's watching sports, doing sports. Women do too, but there's actually somewhat of a gender difference in the majority culture, and it's going away. But that men tend to, when they're building relationships with other guys, at least spend more time and then talk during that versus just sitting down and talking one-to-one. So time is important for some people. I had a leader who said, I grew up in a subculture where if you got a compliment, the next thing that was coming was an ask. It was sort of like, hey man, you're looking good today. Can I catch a ride? Or you got an extra 20. And he said, I just grew up, when I got a word of praise or compliment, a wall goes up and I ask, what do they want from me? But his language was time, and it actually didn't have to do with work. He was a coach. If you went and hung out with him, with the kids he was working with, it lit him up. He was really encouraged. And that's one of the key things of appreciation. It's not only about performance, but it's about, you can value and appreciate somebody for something they're doing in life, right? Whether they're training for a half marathon or whether, they're just a great parent. And so it's not all about work. Acts of service are not examples of rescuing a poor performer. That's not what it's about. It's just that I had one guy, he said, my language is get her done. He said, don't tell me stuff, don't give me stuff, just help me get things done. And then I know you're with me on the team. And so acts of service are really typically small acts that help make a colleague's day or week go better. Think about this situation. It's when you're, up against a deadline and you're cranking hard to try to get things done. What's something somebody could do to help you get there? And that could be bring in something to eat so you can keep working through lunch or dinner. It could be hold your calls and cover your calls so that you can just focus on the project. It might be doing some, stupid menial clerical stuff so that you can focus on the task that only you can do. For a lot of people, and that's about 25%, 20-25% of the population, acts of service is important. Time, it's about 25 to 30%. So it can be as small as, somebody needs some help getting some stuff out of their car and into the office. And I got to tell you, in the workplace, in the general workplace, office workplace, the number one act of service that people ask for out there in the real world is help get my computer to work right. Now, I was actually talking to a group of Microsoft managers. They started to boo me a little bit. I said, hey, get a life. This is what it's like out beyond where you guys are, that whether it's, a certain program that's not interfacing right, the printer or whatever. And as a supervisor, even a colleague, you may not be able to fix it for them, but you may be able to help connect them with the resource. This guy was getting more help than what he needed and probably was more confused after everybody tried to help him out. So you want to get the right person. By the way, that speaks to the fact that our model is used across departments. Who do you want on your good side? IT, because if your computer goes down, you want to, they're going to come help you. Sometimes it's HR and payroll benefits. Sometimes it's facilities if something's broken. So it's not just people you work with day to day, but it can be done across departments as well. Tangible gifts is the next language. This is not bonuses, raises, major rewards like that. Tangible gifts really in this situation are small things that are showing you get to know your colleagues and what they like, and that you think about them a little bit. Now, I ask you, what do you think the number one most frequent tangible gift at work is? Think about it. You got it? It's food. Okay. It can be bringing in somebody's favorite type of coffee. It can bring in bagels, pizza, whatever. One of the things you can do to individualize that, especially if you're bringing in for the group, is make sure you find out what kind of pizza your colleagues like. And if somebody likes meat lovers and somebody wants, vegetarian, you make sure you get that for them. It can get sort of fattening after a while. So I say, hey, bring in fruit. I tell those, this is not so much true anymore, but I mean, there was a time when people would bring in, celery and light ranch, and that's just not encouraging to anybody. I mean, and we do know that the sort of the god of the food, god of the foods is chocolate. So chocolate's always a good avenue to go for people ready. It's helpful. I have a team member, she likes dark chocolate. I like milk chocolate. We try to get it straight. So it's not a big deal. In the food area can be a little something. Here's another example of tangible gifts. It's the magazines, the grocery store or wherever you go, that are about all the different hobbies. You find out that somebody there is a 49ers fan, and so you get them a preseason magazine about that, or somebody's a Raiders fan, or somebody's, I think we've got people in different parts of the country, and you want to make sure you get the right team, or you get them a little thing about that team. Or if somebody likes to, do organic gardening and you see a magazine that's about that and you say, hey, I saw this, thought you might be interested, and, here you go. Or I've had people say they had friends that went to like a conference and, I have expo centers and all that kind of stuff. And a colleague of theirs saw something that they thought they would like. It was about an area of interest they had. Didn't cost them anything. I mean, but he brought it back and said, hey, I saw this, thought you might like it. In this case, it really is the thought that matters. It's not the amount of money. It's not like we're going to get you, a new flat screen TV or something. It's just a little something to say, hey, I know I've learned this about you and thought you might enjoy it. One of the interesting things is tangible gifts, when you focus on it, which a lot of employee recognition programs do. A lot of programs are wasting a lot of money giving stuff. People are going to take it, but less than 6% of the 100,000 people we studied chose tangible awards as the main way they want to be shown appreciation. Why? I've had numerous people say, if if I never hear anything, if nobody ever spends any time with me, they never help me out, but they give me a gift, and the gift doesn't even cost them anything because the company's paying for it, it feels pretty darn superficial. Now, gifts along with one of the other languages can mean something, but just by themselves, they're not that powerful. So then we go to physical touch, which is everybody's favorite one to talk about. And in fact, you know, HR managers, we tend to have paramedics in the room by them. But it's not about, I mean, we have to be careful about inappropriate touch, but it's really about spontaneous celebration. And there's some history and stories I can tell you about, but I can tell you this, that it happens. I mean, in the sense of people celebrate by physical touch, and differs regionally. You know, I mean, anybody else that's lived in the South besides me knows that they do sort of side hugs sometimes, that kind of stuff. And there's some people it's just like, don't touch me, don't come within 3 feet of me, talk to me from over there. In New York or New Jersey, you know, this is physical touch. It's hey, you know, and you just nod across the room. But in a lot of other places, it includes, you know, a high five, a fist bump when you know, solve a problem. And actually, we know that cross-culturally, a pat on the back is sort of the most common, acceptable form of physical touch for celebrating, you know, successes. Now, having said that, I was working with a group of women leaders, and they said, yeah, but 2 pats and no circular motion. We're not going there. So anyway, got to define that correctly. Second core principle, remember the first one is that not everybody feels valued and appreciated in the same ways. We're moving towards the end. This is going to be quick, and then I'll take some questions. Secondly, people want to know that they're valued by both their supervisor and their colleagues, that it's not just top down. If those of you at the main office there, I think a number of you, we got like 50 some books there, then the people that showed up first got a book. If you get a book, in the back of the book, there is a code where you can go to mbainventory.com and take this inventory, and we can get you codes for those that don't want it, as far as we have supervisors just buy those, or you can go online. And there's an online 10 to 15 minute inventory that identifies your primary language of appreciation, your secondary, your least, and then actions that go with it. Are able to create a group profile so that people can find out about their team members, what languages, and also we have a different one that's an action list. And then just to reemphasize, the third key principle is, if it's not perceived as being authentic, you're just dead in the water. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's going badly. And so don't try to fake it. Don't try to push through it. Actually, in the Vibrant Workplace, my new book, we spin a chapter on how do you show appreciation to people that are tough to show appreciation to, people you don't like or don't value. 2 questions, you know, that we want to sort of hone down on is, one, what can you do to help encourage your colleagues? It's not helpful to think about, you know, other people need to show appreciation more to me. You know, everybody listen up, you know, tell me stuff or whatever. You got to start with yourself. So what can you do? And here's what I would say. Think about the person that if they didn't do what they did, your life would be a lot tougher. That's a person you need to communicate appreciation to. So one is, what can you do? We'll come back to that. And then what can be done to help across to apply it across the organization. I would just say, identify somebody you appreciate, identify what they do that you value and helps make your life easier, and then tell them. You can say it verbally, you can, you know, do an email, and if they're in this thing, you can say, hey, I know you may think I'm just doing this because we just had this session, but I really do value this, okay? And so a lot of small actions done by a lot of people can start to make a really big difference in the organization. Secondly, we've got a number of resources, and if you're a leader, manager, or just somebody who wants to figure this out, appreciationatwork.com is our main website. Gets you a lot of stuff. We have books. We have groups of codes that you can get for your team. The group profiles and action lists are free. We've even got an online course for trainers to be able to lead groups through it. A lot of articles and videos. So appreciationatwork.com to look at it. Just a reminder that you can email me at yesdrpaul@gmail.com, and I'll send you the handouts of the slides, send you an article about both manager and peer recognition. I'll get you a link to a funny video. And so let me stop there and see if there's any questions that people might have. Either if you're virtual, you can chat it, or I think Eunice or somebody there can take it in the live room as well.
I'm on handheld 3, Roddy, if you can. Can you hear me? Okay, all right. Can you hear me, Paul?
I can now.
Oh, great. I had a question for you. Is there a particular appreciation style that's more prevalent than others that are most liked?
Yeah, so words clearly are. I mean, that's the most common. 45% of employees are value words, and it's a pretty innocuous one. I mean, as long as you do it privately. A lot of people don't like to be praised in public. And in the inventory, I didn't mention this, but we identify sort of both the languages and the actions that they like and don't like, so that you don't do something that's not going to work for them or actually create problems. But words is clearly the way to go.
Hey, so you mentioned a lot of different forms of appreciation. What I didn't see up there is money.
Yep.
So what do you feel about money or bonuses or, that kind of thing as a form of appreciation?
Yeah, I really relegate that to recognition, because money and those kinds of rewards, those are motivators, but that's it's essentially a contract between the employer or the manager and the employee. So what I don't want to get is into a situation where trying to encourage people to do things that they don't have the power or authority to do. So for a lot of people, and it varies both personality-wise and industry, they are motivated to do well by money or other kinds of physical rewards, but a lot of people aren't. And it's also tougher in sort of the workplace to focus on money or high level gifts, because you got tax issues, and you also have issues of just finding the right thing that people want. I mean, that's where it gets weird. We actually did some research about around the holidays and Christmas gifts, that it creates some weirdness. So it can be there, but we're trying to focus on non-financial rewards, because we find that a majority of people feel truly valued without money having to be there.
Other questions?
Hi, Paul. I had a question about, obviously not everyone's going to be taking the survey to find out where they fall in, the 5 languages. So how do you go about finding out, discovering someone else's language? I'm sure you can start at the top with the 55% in words.
Right.
Just keep going through and trying to see what sticks or what has
Yeah,
impact.
it's a challenge, and this may sound self-serving, but I mean, it is a challenge in that talking about, or even asking somebody, if I want to show you appreciation, how should I do that? That's a sort of a weird conversation in our culture. And secondly, most people don't know. I mean, just to come up with it, they may say, well, I don't know, tell me thanks, but they don't have much of a breadth of answers or experiences that they think of. And so it's hard to just sort of talk about it. And also, I mean, in personal relationships, you can sort of observe other people, what they're doing. In the workplace, there's not enough data points, I mean, to know, whether they like time or words. And also, we did a little bit of research that found that what people do to show appreciation is only about 75% of the time what they want themselves. And that's especially true for gift givers. So a lot of people like to give gifts that getting a gift doesn't mean that much to them. So observing them, asking them, the only way that we've sort of gotten in the side door a little bit is people are more in touch with what encourages them, or like when you're discouraged, what encourages you. Because encouragement and appreciation are pretty much the same actions, but the time frame is different. Appreciation is typically for the past and what they've done, up to this point. Encouragement is the present and the future, but the actions are the same. So you could say, when you get discouraged and down, what's something that either people have done or could do that would encourage you? That's going to get you there. Again, you're going to have a pretty limited number of options that they're going to think about, but it's at least a start.
Hi, Paul. What role does self-appreciation play in terms of appreciation in the workplace? And do you have suggestions for ways that we can show appreciation for ourselves as well?
Yeah, great question. Actually, that's one of the issues that we deal with in the vibrant workplace, because one of the common responses by supervisors and managers is, okay, how am I supposed to show appreciation to other people when I don't feel appreciated myself? And that's just a super question, because ultimately we have to learn, at least sometimes, to motivate, reward, encourage ourselves. I mean, can't be looking always for external affirmation. And so it's an important part. And in fact, sometimes that's somewhat what a true leader is that they are able to lead and continue to communicate appreciation even when they're feeling pretty dry themselves. And you can only go so far. But there's a number of things that you can do. One is do things for yourself that you like. You know, I mean, in fact, before I was working here this morning. I said, I got to get outside. It's a pretty day. So I went and took a walk and enjoyed the sunshine. And just that was a little bit of a reward for myself. Okay. And so do things for yourself. Surround yourself with supportive people, whether that's friends, family, or workers that, you're going to hear positive things from. And take care of yourself in the sense of physically. One of the things that we know when people get in a bad spot is you start to not sleep as well. You don't exercise, you don't eat as well, health goes down, and then it sort of cycles down from there. So, and there's some other ways, even from a spiritual, personal life meaning, to get a sense of, okay, what rejuvenates me? And for me, it's nature, music, laughter. And so you want to explore those and make sure those stay part of your life.
Could you share your email address one more time?
Yeah, my email is paul@drpaulwhite.com, drpaulwhite.com. The website where most of the materials, I'm sorry, I gave the wrong, the one for requesting stuff is just yesdrpaul@gmail. Yesdrpaul@gmail.com.
Yes, Dr. Paul at Gmail. Great, thank you.
You bet. Well, I know you guys need to go or want to go. Let me just finish up real quick with this, and then if there's any others, I'm glad to hang out, and if somebody wants to stay online, that's fine. But let me just say this. One of the things that we know that helps both in the workplace as well as just for ourselves is developing a perspective of gratitude and thankfulness, and that, we can get caught up in how many emails we got to do and how bad traffic is. But the reality is, for most of us, life is pretty darn good. I mean, that we've got safe water, we've got shelter, we've got clothes, we've got food to eat, we have people in our lives that care about us. And then at work, you have good team members. I mean, you're not going to get along with everybody. If there's quality people you get to work with, just be thankful about that. And then along the way as well, just enjoy the day, and don't forget to just take time and smile and laugh and have a fun time. I'll hang out here, but I'll let you guys go. And I hope to be able to help you out some more or hear from you as you would like some information from me. Thanks.